Hello, viewers. Welcome to Divine Revelation. My name is David, and I share powerful stories of people who have seen the other side, people who have died, entered a coma, or had near-death experiences. If you enjoy these videos, please consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you won't miss our new videos. Your support helps us grow, and we truly appreciate it.
My name is Angela Martinez. I was born and raised in a strong Catholic family in San Antonio, Texas. From a young age, I was deeply involved in the church, especially the choir. Singing for the Lord was my greatest joy. My parents, devoted Catholics, taught me the ways of God, and I grew up believing I was on the right path. At 24, I married my wonderful husband, James, in the same church where I had worshipped since childhood. He was a good man, a man of prayer, and together we were determined to build a godly home. But there was one thing missing: children. For 13 years I was barren. Doctors found no medical explanation, but deep inside I always felt something was wrong. One evening I was in the kitchen preparing dinner. Our toaster had been malfunctioning for days, and without thinking, I reached for it while my hands were wet. The shock was instant and powerful. I felt my body jerk violently and everything went black. Suddenly, I found myself floating above my lifeless body. I could see myself lying on the floor, my husband running in, screaming my name. But I felt no pain. Instead, I felt a pull, an unknown force dragging me away. Faster than I could process, I was no longer in my home. I found myself in a horrible place. The heat and an unbearable stench. I heard endless cries. Millions of souls screaming in pains. Shadows moved all around, and grotesque creatures tormented the souls. I knew where I was. This was hell. Before I could scream, a bright light appeared. An angel, clothed in unimaginable glory, stood before me. His face was radiant yet stern. I wanted to run to him to plead for help, but he raised his hand. A large screen appeared before me. I watched in horror as my life played before my eyes. Scenes from my childhood, my teenage years, and my adult life flashed before me. Every secret sin, every hidden deed I thought no one knew. It was all there. I saw myself. I was only 19 when I met Father Emmanuel. He was young, new to our parish, and full of fire for God. His sermons carried a passion that stirred something deep within me, but it wasn't holiness that I felt. It was something else, something dark and forbidden. First, I was subtle. I made sure to greet him with a lingering smile after Massachusetts. I asked him questions about the Bible, questions that required long discussions in his office. He was kind, always patient, always willing to guide me. But I knew what I was doing. I let my hands brush against his when he handed me books. I let my eyes linger a second too long. One evening, under the dim glow of his office lamp, I sat across from him and told him about my struggles, my doubts, my loneliness. My voice was soft, my eyes filled with unshed tears. "I'm here to help," he said, leaning forward. I let the silence stretch between us, thick with something unspoken. Then I reached for his hand. He hesitated but didn't pull away. "You make me feel safe," I whispered. That night we fell. The guilt came fast and hard, but it wasn't enough to stop me. It wasn't enough to stop him either. We told ourselves it was a mistake, that it wouldn't happen again. But it did happen. Again and again. Then I missed my period. Panic gripped me as I stared at the pregnancy test. The 2 lines were clear, undeniable. My hands trembled. I was 19, unmarried, and carrying a priest's child. I didn't tell Father Emmanuel. Couldn't. Instead, I made an appointment at a clinic across town. I sat in the waiting room, heart pounding, stomach twisting, ready to abort. When it was over, I told myself I had no choice, that it was better this way. But in the quiet of the night, when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I felt the weight of what I had done. Years passed, and Father Emmanuel left the parish. Another priest came to take his place, Father Gregory. He was kind, gentle, and devoted to his faith. He took an interest in my spiritual growth, always asking if I needed guidance. I saw an opportunity. I played the innocent girl in need of direction, soaking in his attention like a thirsty plant. He cared, truly cared, and I used it against him. One evening after a late choir rehearsal, I stayed behind, pretending I needed help with a hymn. "You have a beautiful voice," he said, smiling. I looked up at him, my eyes searching his. "Do you really think so?" He nodded. "Of course." I reached out and touched his arm. He stiffened but didn't move away. "You're always so good to me," I murmured. His defenses crumbled. Once again I led a man of God into sin. And once again I found myself staring at a pregnancy test, my hands shaking as my past came back to haunt me. I took the same path as before. Same clinic, same sterile smell, same hollow feeling. Then came Father Joseph. Unlike the others, he was strict, firm in his convictions. But I loved a challenge. I confessed things to him that I knew would make him uncomfortable, whispered sins that made him shift in his chair. He resisted for weeks, but I was relentless. I visited him constantly, always finding an excuse to see him. I saw the battle in his eyes, the cracks forming in his resolve. And when he finally gave in, I knew I had won. We were together for months before I found out I was pregnant again. By then I was numb. The clinic felt like a second home. The last was Father Michael. By then I was already married, but marriage hadn't changed me. My heart was still rotten. I sought out Father Michael, not because I needed him, but because I wanted to see if I still had the power to make a priest fall. And I did. This time there was no child. But the damage was done. Now, as I sit in the stillness of my empty home, I see the truth. I destroyed them. And in doing so, I destroyed myself. Each time I laid on that cold clinic table, I took more than just life. I took pieces of my own soul. The doctors never knew. The priests never knew. But I knew. I had cursed my own womb. I saw many times my husband cried to God for fruits of the womb. It broke me more. I knew the cause of my childlessness. I fell to my knees, shaking, my hands clutching at the ground beneath me. A terrible force had dragged me here, and now I stood before the throne of God. The light was too bright for my eyes, too holy for a soul like mine. I could not lift my head, could not speak. Then a voice like thunder filled the heavens. "You knew my commands, yet you defiled yourself. You corrupted my servants. You shed innocent blood." I trembled. My lips moved, but no words came out. My mind screamed for mercy, but how could I ask for it? Every sin I had committed was laid bare before me. Then I saw the angel. His face was stern, his eyes like fire. He lifted his hand and pointed. The ground cracked open. A horrifying pit stretched below me, deep and endless, filled with fire that roared like a living beast. I heard screams, screams that shook my soul. Men and women, naked and burning, thrashed in the flames. Their flesh melted, yet they did not die. Their bodies burned but never turned to ash. Above them, a massive screen flickered in the sky, playing out every sin they had ever committed. I saw them in the moments of their lust, every act of adultery, every time they defiled their bodies. They reached up, covering their faces, but they could not escape the visions. A man beside me groaned in agony. his eyes wild with fear. "No, I didn't know. I didn't know," he cried. But he had known. Just as I had known. The angel pointed again. I turned and saw them. Souls bound in thick, heavy chains, dragged by hideous demons with sunken eyes and twisted faces. These demons laughed as they pulled the sinners deeper into the pit, their claws tearing into flesh. The chains were not ordinary. Each link was made of darkness, pulsing with a terrible energy. The angel spoke and I understood. These chains were forged by their own sins. Every time they committed fornication, every time they gave in to lust, the chains grew heavier. Now they belonged to their sin. A woman was dragged past me, her arms outstretched. "Help me! Please help me!" she screamed. But there was no help. The angel turned once more. "Look," he commanded. I looked. A river stretched before me, but it was not water. It was blood, thick, boiling, and dark as night. It flowed endlessly, steam rising from its surface. And within it I saw them. Women, men, their faces twisted in horror, flailed and thrashed, trying to stay afloat. But the river pulled them down. Their mouths opened in silent screams as something beneath the surface tore at their flesh. "These are those who shed innocent blood," the angel said. Then I saw them, small, shadowy figures in the water. Babies. Tiny souls reaching out with ghostly hands. Their eyes were full of sorrow, not hatred. The women in the river screamed as the dark hands grabbed them, dragging them under. They came up gasping, only to be pulled down again. My knees buckled. I had been here before. Not in body but in guilt. Cold table. The harsh lights. The doctor's voice saying it was over. I saw myself lying there staring at the ceiling. Me. Now I was here, staring at the faces of the children I had taken. I let out a wail, pressing my hands to my face. "No. No, please." The angel said nothing. I looked back at the pit, at the flames, at the chains, at the river. I knew I belonged there. I'd played with sin. I had defiled the temple of God. I had led his servants astray. Now judgment had come. I wept like never before. "Lord, please. Show me mercy. I will change. I will tell the world." The angel looked at me with sorrow but said nothing. Suddenly a voice thundered, "Go and warn them." At that moment I felt myself falling, backward, downward, until I gasped and opened my eyes. I was back in my physical body. My husband was crying over me. I was alive. From that day I changed. I confessed my sins and told my husband everything. I dedicated my life to God, warning others about the dangers of hidden sin. Hell is real. Sin has consequences. Repent while you still can. May God bless you all.